We would be one indeed, my friends. And today I want to welcome somebody who needs very little introduction to many of you, but to others of you, she's brand new. And this is our wonderful Thelma Williams, who's been here for 52 years as a member. And so I thought it would be very appropriate for Thelma to talk about our amazing past as a congregation and all the many things you've seen over the last 52 years here. Thank you, Thelma.
Thank you. So as you know, I'm Thelma with a husky voice this morning. I'm sorry about that. Today I'd like to catch you up on Chalice's past. And as I throw out dates and places we met, I just need to remind you that this was a group of people who believed in what we believed in our values and feelings, and they never gave up. They were always ready to go on, and I think that's really an important value that we have as Unitarians. I visited and joined UU in 1971. A small but actively forward-thinking group was meeting in a little room at the Thousand Oaks Recreation Center on Moore Park Road. There was a basketball game going on in one of the areas and a racquetball game going on somewhere else. So you can be sure that we had to speak loudly to be heard. But I felt at home immediately. I mean, they were a wonderful group, and they respect and the values that they had were mine. So I joined. The fellowship was chartered in 1962, and it was lay-led at that time, of course. We didn't have any minister or anything. And as it met in rented homes, they bought a house for a while, but that didn't work out especially well. At the old YMCA, at the Moose Lodge, and some of the rooms of the Methodist Church. So those were all places that they met before I came. It was an active, dedicated group, and that was important. We have a wonderful historian, Sylva Johnson, who has kept track of all that's been going on for years. And thanks to Sylvia. And she said attaining our own facility was considered terribly important. Finding a church of our own was what we wanted, and it had always been in our minds. So that was the idea way back then, and still is today, as we know. So we met in several more places, and as we grew, each move helped the members expand their thinking and plan ahead. In 1977, we met at the old Jan's home, which was a wonderful building up on the hill above the Los Robles golf course. It was a great place to meet. We loved meeting there. And we were growing, and we were erecting more members. We were getting young families. And all of a sudden, the city decided, it was an art center, and still is, by the way, but they decided that they were going to change the policy of who could rent the buildings for the city. So once again, we had to challenge ourselves and became nomads again for a while. I remember meeting at the YWCA, the one that's up on the building that's been closed now, but on the other side of Thousand Oaks, and also a small amphitheater at CLU outside one summer. And the RE people had to drag all their stuff with them every single time. It was a challenge, but nobody gave up. This was a group that really believed in their values. In 1982, and then again in 1994, we met at the Church of the Oaks, which was a United Church of Christ liberal group that was at Moorwick Avenue. First, we used only the fellowship hall. And then in 1994, we moved into the chapel. But we had to meet in the afternoons because, of course, we couldn't meet in the morning because that's when they had their services. But in between times, we met in several places, including the place that Ali mentioned this morning, the Meadows Park and Rec place, which was down on Marview Road. And we met in this huge big room, and we had these big folders that we used to put up. But the kids loved it because there was an outdoor area, and there was a place for them to play in the creek when they wanted to. We stretched and grew, and it was important that we continue to have young kids, and we had a lot of kids in those days. And it was really hard for the religious education people to find a place to meet sometimes. But they did, and we were glad that we had the kids because they were very much a part of growing. And we also found young families that came and enjoyed what we did. So in 1996, we moved to the Goebel Center, and I think a lot of you maybe started going to the Unitarian Church at that time. A lot of people went to the Goebel Center. It had a big room. The only problem was we had to pack everything up after every service. But we were there quite a while, and it was a great place to be. We attracted new, innovative members. We had a great board. Remember, we didn't have a minister at that time. We were just a lay-led, that's what they call them, lay-led group of people. But the Goebel Center was a good place to meet, and it was centrally located. And I just want you to think about this a minute. It's not easy to find a place for us to go on Sunday mornings to meet. We were being a big group then, and we had lots of children. And so it was hard for us to find places that we could meet in. I know because I was on the housing committee for many years. But we stretched and we grew and we raised more funds once again. But successfully this time, we had our first Sunday service in our new church home at 3327 Old Caneo School Road. Does anybody recognize that address? And here we are today. This place has allowed us to have a steady face in the community. We're known as a caring, liberal community, dedicated to justice and the continuing search for truth and meaning. How will we develop that as we actively learn and grow, to challenge ourselves persistently and bravely explore our plans for the future? We have a wonderful legacy of churching, challenging ourselves, and reaching for new ways of making our presence known in the community. I'm curious about our next chapter.
Thank you so much, Thelma, for sharing that really important history of this community with us all, reminding us all what the legs we are that we stand on, the shoulders we stand on, rather, not the legs, the shoulders. And thank you to so many others here. I see Floyd right there, see people online, see so many of you who've been here for such a long time. I'm so grateful for your years of faithfulness to Chalice. Through all the ups and downs and changes, you all have witnessed so much and been so faithful, so grateful. So what a lot of transformation we've undergone in the last 61 years. Isn't it amazing? Changes that all seem to help us in some way take the next step and grow and increase our presence in the community. And my friends, I think we've not only survived, but we've flourished as a result of these changes. And here we are at yet another inflection point in our community's story. We've been in these buildings now, these beautiful buildings, for the last 15 years, since 2008. And with this steadfast home, we've had an amazing opportunity to grow in our scope and reach as a fellowship, and we've done so much here. We increased our influence in the community with our successful community forums. We formed justice partnerships. We cooked meals and created care kits for the unhoused. We held meaningful worship and rituals in this beautiful sanctuary week after week, and then continued online when we had to close down due to COVID. And we've grown to a steady fellowship of around 200 members, plus our many children, through the tenure of 5 different ministers over the years. We've celebrated births and celebrated the lives of many of our beloveds who have sadly passed on. And we've watched many of our beautiful children grow up. There's one right here in the back who's running our technology. And go to college and start careers and families of their own. So we're so thrilled to have you, to watch you, become the human beings that you are. And over this time, we changed our name and survived a pandemic together while retrofitting our spaces for hybrid technology so we can welcome the 53 or so people who are with us online today, as well as all the people in person. We've done so much together, my friends, and it's due to all of you. We could not have done this without the care and love and enthusiasm that you all have for this community. You've allowed us to thrive together. And for those of you who are new to us, I just want to explain a little bit of history that the congregation stretched to pay off our mortgage on Fellowship Hall next door in 2021 through a capital campaign. And this was a huge undertaking that, thanks to members' generosity, allowed us to become more financially sustainable. And meanwhile, we've been renting this beautiful building, our sanctuary, from a group of investors called the OCR, which stands for the Old Conejo Road. And this group generously bought the sanctuary 15 years ago so that we could rent it as a congregation and have it as a home to worship in. And they've now decided that they wish to sell this building by June 2024, which is much longer than they intended in the first place. So we're so grateful to all the OCR members. In fact, no words can thank these investors enough for all these years of leasing us this space and for their incredible vision and generosity to the fellowship. And now, my friends, we as a congregation either have to buy this building from them by June 2024 or find a new home for our worship services. So in June of this year, this past June, the members of our congregation overwhelmingly voted to look for other possible fellowship homes. A home sweet home that would allow us to grow larger. As you can see, we're very full on a Sunday, and serve more people. A place with outside space for children to play and families to meet, where we could plant gardens together and socialize outside, as well as having a space that might be more visible to others in the community. So we formed a site visioning team who've been working diligently alongside the board to explore new possible options for us, as well as looking into how this can work within our financial realities. And more about that in our congregational gathering after this service. So if you're curious about that, please stay at 11:30 and join us for that. So driven by our mission, which you can see up there on the wall, to nurture spiritually courageous people who transform the world through justice and compassion, we have been exploring and imagining all kinds of possible futures and incarnations for Chalice. Church-going, my friends, has transformed since COVID, as you know. This major societal upheaval has meant that people are increasingly leaving churches as they discover other ways to spend their Sundays. So we really are at an inflection point about how we continue to share our important message of welcome, inclusion, freedom, and love in action. How we provide opportunities for people of all ages to find meaningful community that explores the major questions of life together with open minds. How we build something that is relevant in the post-pandemic 21st century. How we attract people of all ages to come together to transform the world through justice and compassion. And of course, as our world struggles with the climate crisis, and the breakdown of democracy, and increasing violence and hate and disinformation, we need to ask ourselves how we can provide a haven of peace, connection, consciousness, kindness, and loving action. So the sight visioning team is being creative and exploring all kinds of possibilities for us. Now, one possibility for our home sweet home might be, for example, to buy a horse ranch or a house with a lot of land, which, in addition to our usual activities, would allow us to have therapeutic animals and plots for regenerative agriculture. We could live our ecological values while offering opportunities for all to care for and connect with this beautiful creation that we hope to steward. Children and youth of all abilities could come and be with our fellowships, dogs and goats and chickens and even horses. And families could tend regenerative gardens together, growing produce for those in need. I hear a buzz of excitement in the congregation. And we could collectively get more deeply connected to this beautiful land that holds us all and be a living model of care and connection with the earth. A therapeutic space that soothes the spirit in multitudes of ways and draws those who feel disconnected from themselves and the earth to help improve mental health in this chaotic time. In such a sanctuary property, we could also hold meditation groups and yoga classes and concerts and services outside in a barn, perhaps. And if the pandemic reappears, we could continue to worship in person, outside in our mild climate. And meanwhile, we could become a place where people want to gather and heal and find peace and inspiration while we share our message of transforming the world with questioning minds, loving hearts, and helping hands. So I invite you to imagine with us. Another option for our home sweet home might be to locate an old school property that we could repurpose to have classes of all kinds and be a liberal spiritual center in the community. We could become a community hub in which we help unhoused people and youth and create gathering spaces for our justice partnerships and help other nonprofits grow in our home. Or we might find an old church with lots of outside space that we could repurpose or renovate with a UU lens using our beautiful modern technology. And we could cultivate areas of land for community gardens and perhaps build a labyrinth for meditative wandering. There are so many possibilities, even within our limited budget, if we think outside the box, envisioning the church of the future. A community that draws people to us because we are offering them something that they need and want in this current time. And that is different from what it used to be. So what might you imagine for how we can stay relevant and further our mission into the future? So please let the sight visioning team know if you have ideas that you'd like us to explore. Simply email them at svt@chaliceu.org. That address is in our news and notes, and it'll also be up there for you in our congregational gathering later. Now, of course, we are aware that all this change, just like we saw in our story earlier, can create anxiety. Most humans don't really like change. Change is hard. Leaving somewhere familiar for an unknown future can feel daunting and overwhelming. And some of you may feel we're doing just fine here and we don't need more transition. You want us to continue to focus on the important work of justice and liberation that we are already doing. Absolutely, my friends. Indeed, we may find that there are no better options available to us, and that buying the sanctuary from the OCR and staying here is indeed the best choice for us. But it's not necessarily the least expensive option for us, and will also take significant commitment from our congregation financially. But we will make the decision about what to do collectively early next year together. And many of you are concerned that we have limited room to grow here and that it's hard for people to find us, and we have no real outside space for all our beautiful children to play and for fellowship. And since we have this chance now to see if we could evolve into the next iteration of Chalice, like Thelma talked about, the many iterations over the years, most of you have said you want to explore how we might envision a new version of our community, relevant and inviting during this quickly changing world of ours. So we sit here with many feelings, and invite us now to take a moment to turn to a neighbor, or if you're sitting by yourself, find someone near you. And at home, I invite you to think about what you feel about when you think about the possibility of change, of moving to another location as a congregation. Now, we did this exercise at our recent board and leadership retreat, and we're surprised at the variety of thoughts that came up. So I invite you now to turn to a neighbor and each share briefly your thoughts and feelings about change in your own life, and change for our congregation. And if you're online, I invite you to write your feelings about change into the chat. If you'd bring your conversation to a close, please. Kindly bring your conversation to a close. Thank you. All righty. So, at our leadership retreat, all these feelings came up about change, and I'm going to have Spencer put up a slide right now about change. So these feelings came up: terror, excitement, energy, skepticism, fun, acceptance, surrender, imagination, grief, resistance, and gradual acceptance. And now I want to read what people online have been writing. Fear and excitement, writes Leanne. Willie Lupka says, we can do this. Lorella Hess writes, vulnerability. Claudia Barton writes, big smile. Sylvia Flores-Johnson, our historian, writes, excitement. Laurie McKinnon writes, open to growth. Crystal McCauley writes, open possibilities. And I ask any of you here in this room who have something that has not been mentioned yet, what would you like to add to that list? Just raise your hand and I'll call it out and I'll repeat it into the microphone. Anything else? Yes, Grenda.
Well, of course.
Well, of course. Okay. Yes. One? Wonder. That's a lovely attribute. Wonder. Yes. Who else has anything that have not been mentioned yet? Yes. Say that again. Safeguarded. Let us progress. Okay, progress. Great, thank you, progress. Okay, anything else that people in the room wish to share? Connection to earth. Yes, yes, thank you, Pamela. All right, so let me see if there's anything else. Yes, there's, Therese Cummings writes, compassion. Okay. So, now, I just want to talk about how all of these feelings about change can show up in the form of anxiety, right? We can have, if we're concerned about change, we can have these feelings inside that may not feel so comfortable. So in the leadership retreat, they felt anxiety could take any of those following forms. The stomach hurts, or you feel worried or hyper or agitated, or there are questions or withdrawal or short-tempered, combativeness or friction, perseveration, disconnection, over-eager, urgency, sleeplessness. Okay, so I now ask you again to turn to your neighbor, just briefly. Please listen for the gong to complete, and see if there are any other feelings that you have that come up around anxiety. How does anxiety manifest in you? And those online, please start writing in the chat about anxiety. Thank you all. So online, we have the following additional feelings about anxiety. Leanne writes unease. Therese Cummings writes stuck. Laurie McKinnon writes avoidance. Sylvia Flores-Johnson writes hard to breathe. Michael, I think it's Michael Pitas, writes defensive, exhausted. Sue Norton writes, the opportunity to share space with nonprofits and to be outdoors is wondrous, but I'm a little concerned about our problems in our current space, is problems of privilege. Absolutely. And what about in this room? Are there other feelings about anxiety that come up that you wish to add to? Can we afford it? Can we, financial issue, financial concerns. Yes, anything else? Okay. Yeah, yes, there's someone. Oh, yes, Homer? Concerns about how to involve new generations. Right. So we need the fresh air, yes. We need multiple generations for everybody in the community, absolutely. So my friends, we can see that feelings about change and anxiety can loom large, and they can impact how we are together, and it's important for us all to be aware of that. But what do we do with that anxiety around change as we undergo this process? How do we acknowledge and understand these feelings without letting fears run us? So I think you can take that slide down now, so we don't let the fears run us. First of all, I want you all to know that our leadership teams are here to listen. So please speak to any member of the site visioning team, the board, or the Committee on Shared Ministry if you have anxieties or concerns that you wish to share, and more about them in the meeting after the service. And secondly, one of the most important things we teach as a spiritual community is for us to find our own ways of centering and calming ourselves. I was so thrilled this week to reach my milestone of 1,500 days in a row of meditation, which is over. There we go. There's my proof. 1,500 consecutive days. And you know my phone is the thing that keeps me going. I have to be accountable to it. But that's over 4 years of every day meditating. And I can't emphasize enough what this daily practice of quiet awareness and deep inner listening has done for me. It gives me a place to calm the noise and to ground and center my anxious mind and become aware of a deep inner calm and knowing. And cultivating spaces like that within ourselves is one of the most important things that we can do during times of transition or dissolution as we are experiencing in our society currently. So I ask you again, as I do on a regular basis, and I don't want to sound like an old broken record, but I know personally I need regular encouragement. What daily practice do you do, or could you have, to calm your inner anxiety, still your mind, and soothe your worries about life? Do you go out into nature? Do you pray or journal or make music or art or garden? Do you embroider or knit or dance or exercise? There's so many different tools for grounding yourself, finding joy, and growing your awareness to still your monkey mind. But I would definitely recommend finding some time for silence every day during which nothing is demanded of you, and you can connect with your own deeper inner currents or the voice of spirit in your life. And another practice for us during this time is to listen to one another with openness and curiosity. None of us has the answer or knows exactly what we should be doing with our future. We're all doing our best for the highest good of this community, and that is another important part. Leadership is committed to not preferring their own individual opinions about what we should do, but rather to listen to and discern the highest collective good for this community. So I invite us all to explore this next chapter with that kind of presence. What can we each do to discern the highest good for our fellowship as a whole, so we can make the greatest difference in the wider world? Listen and advocate for that. And in closing, I wish to share a gift that we received from our UUA Congregational Life Leadership Retreat Facilitator, Melissa James. Now, Melissa James filled this bottle with dirt from our land between our sanctuary and fellowship hall. And she invited us to keep this bottle on our altar during this transition, to remind us that the UUA and others are holding us, and that wherever we go, we will take this piece of home with us. Either this earth will go with us to our new home sweet home, or be put into the ground here, or it will be returned to our home sweet home in this sanctuary once we own it. So either way, we are held, we are cared for and encouraged during this time of transition with this symbol. Give this to Ani to put here on our altar. The entire board, the site visioning team, and the Committee on Shared Ministry and staff also received small bottles with our earth to symbolize holding our land in their care as they search for our home sweet home. So, my friends, may we together, with care and love, find our home sweet home, whether it's here or in a new location. May we do so holding our highest values and good in mind. May we act from a centered, caring, thoughtful place in this transition. And may we know that we are all in this transition together. And may we always remember, wherever we are, to answer the call of love together. May it be so.